Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast with me, Mark Cribb. Now, it is just 2 weeks to go until hospitality in the UK is due to reopen its doors after more than 3 months in hibernation. Rents are almost due again, job retention contributions start in about 40 days, and it feels like we are on the crest of a wave. A potential tsunami is about to be unleashed of business closures, layoffs and redundancies. I am not sure if the government fully appreciate the predicament. I used to think they did, but in the past week or so, I have to say I've lost a little faith. I know it must be incredibly hard to manage so many complicated issues happening simultaneously. But right now, I can't help but feel that hospitality is not getting the support and the recognition that we hoped for, and fundamentally, that we as a sector deserve. We've overpaid in business rates, VAT and excise duty for years. UK hospitality has been fighting the overtaxation in our industry well before COVID, and now we need support, and a lot less support than when the banks were bailed. We hoped for some legislation around rents, not a woolly code of conduct. We hoped for an industry-specific job retention scheme for us and a few other sectors such as travel, who clearly are far from out of the woods. We are still hoping for a VAT break, but hope alone is not enough. Germany has cut VAT on hospitality from 19% to 5% until the end of June 2021. France, Italy and Spain already charge VAT at 10% on hotel rooms compared to 20% in the UK. Time is running out. The tsunami could be a wave, but on the current trajectory, I am the most nervous I have been. And yet hospitality is the reason to live on planet Earth. Time with friends, with family, with loved ones, graduations, birthdays, meetings. So much happens in our social spaces that are the fabric of society. And on the current trajectory, so many of these spaces are going to disappear for quite some time. And of course, I'm optimistic that we'll bounce back in time. But some of this pain just feels unnecessary. At the very least, let's get the bloody date that we can reopen sorted. And I think that most people now are just getting on with it. We're going for the 4th of July. It's too late to wait for 100% authority. Let's just get the rotas done, get the suppliers lined up and go for it. Boris, if you are listening, I'm happy to chat all of this through. Anyway, rant over, on to today's guest, and fortunately he is a super positive human with a very infectious energy. I've spoken to Griff Holland from Friska before, and I love his love of food and drink and human beings. And this time we touch on how trade has been in the last 6 months before lockdown, and how he'd been navigating Brexit indecision, multiple elections and a very stormy winter. We look at the rollercoaster of shutdown itself and how Griff pretty much nailed his plans in just one emergency COVID meeting rather than one every day. And then in his ever positive manner we switch to his pivots to deliver and Friska at home. Why he's not a huge fan of deliveroo, and whether his sweet spot will still be busy lunches near glass-fronted office blocks, or if he's having to rethink his strategy. I'm sure you'll get a nugget or two and enjoy the conversation. And before I head over to Griff, please do me a favour and head over to humansofhospitality.co.uk and pop your details into our sign-up form for a weekly email from me. No spam, no stupid stuff, just a new episode, currently twice per week, and a whole heap of love from me because it means I know you are listening. Thanks. Griff Holland from Friska, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Hugely appreciated. Can I just ask where you are in the world, Griff? Are you at home? Are you in Bristol? Or?
Hi, Mark. Good to hear from you. Yeah, I am sat in my old bedroom. We've recently had a third child, so I've decamped to the guest room. So I'm sat in my old bedroom in Bristol at the moment.
My goodness, I'd forgotten you were having another baby. I think it was due. So I think we sat down probably about 6 or so months ago. So yeah, how old's the youngest?
Yeah, well, 6 months actually.
I think that rings a bell. It's due when we sat down. Congratulations.
Right. That's right. Yeah. She's entered the world at a reasonably interesting time. Although I'm sure, well, hopefully she won't remember any of it. We'll see how long the effects of what's going on last. But yeah, she's 6 months old and Yeah, less of a challenge than number one, I would say. You kind of just go with the flow, and yeah,
I
it's all good.
I was going to say is having three times as difficult, but I presume they only add a sort of a relatively small percentage of chaos each time you add one, presumably.
Yeah, and I just think you're that much more grounding, and you've got less expectations about what you can get out of the day, or the fact that you won't be going out with your partner on a date for God knows how long. So yeah, it definitely gets easier. Either expectations go down, or you get better at being a parent. But one of the two, but the experience is
Yeah.
easier.
I was going to say, I think the expectations that they go down in regard to yourself, not of your children. It's yeah, you just lose all hope in your ability. Well, look, thank you so much for sparing the time in what is a challenging time anyway, having young kids, but also I'm sure as we're about to hear with the business. So for those who've not listened, episode 47, you and I had a really good chat about your inspiration and about your travels, about your obsession of exactly the right amount of avocado in a wrap, and why you set the business up. So anybody can go back and type in either your name, Griff, or 47 into the hospitality Humans of Hospitality website and go back and listen to our chat. So I'm not going to go back in time, but for those who don't know you, can you just explain a little bit about what Friska is and where you're based and what you do, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep it brief because I know we're going to be talking about other things today. So Friska is basically fresh fast food, speciality coffee. It's a feel-good cafe. At the moment, we've got 8 stores in Bristol and 3 in Manchester. And up until about 2.5, 3 months ago, we used to predominantly cater for business people. So our outlets, our places were in central business districts in Bristol and Manchester. Suffice to say, we have no open cafes at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So last time we spoke, we did touch on the sort of challenging environment of our sector. We, tight margins, a bit of oversupply. I think since then we saw some fairly high profile, Carluccio's and Jamie's and a few others go under.
Mm.
How have the last 6 months pre-pandemic? How were things looking for this year? Were you still sort of rolling out, opening up new venues, and how was the business generally performing before this little shocker?
Yeah, I would say before everything changed, trading conditions were reasonably challenging. I mean, looking back retrospectively now, I'd take those any day. Um,
Yeah.
but if we rewind 4 months ago, it was tough. It was tough. Our like for likes were sort of flattish. People I was talking to in the sector were saying that trading conditions were tough. And I don't know if you remember, there was this sort of small thing going on called Brexit. A while
Rings a distant bell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, at the moment, I probably vote for bloody Brexit rather than have what we're dealing with at the moment.
Yeah. Would you A, like a global pandemic, or B, like Brexit? Yeah.
So yeah, I think sort of most businesses were sort of dealing with the sort of uncertainty around Brexit. We were kind of thinking about what's going to happen, how's the terms of trade going to look like, even who's going to win the general election. So all of that stuff meant that I think consumer sentiment and indeed business sentiment felt a little ruffled. So that's kind of how we ended the year and started this year. Then the heavens opened, the floods came.
Yeah.
Fortunately for the cities we operate in and serve, we weren't affected by those floods. And then everything started to calm down, and then yeah, people start getting ill in China and spread.
Had you opened any new venues in the last 6 months? Or
In another universe, we're probably getting ready to open another one in about a couple of weeks' time, actually.
yeah,
But
okay.
yeah, we were planning on opening another one up in Manchester, um, and we were having conversations with a large employer about effectively putting in a Friska as their on-site canteen. Now, both of those opportunities are quote unquote live, but they're kind of TBC as to when they'll actually open. I mean, the landscape has completely changed. Lots of things have been delayed. Although I saw today in the papers that Luke Johnson's planning on opening a Gales bakery in Windsor. I mean, he's been particularly bullish with his sort of feelings about how the government's dealt with Corona and saying we should all reopen and crack on. But yeah, I would say looking out in the streets, footfall is down. Looking at the footfall stats around our stores, we're not trading at all. But there's about 20% of the previous footfall going past our stores. Yeah, things like this are happening more and more. I'm just praying to the business gods that Zoom and Google Hangouts and God knows what doesn't take over and become the new normal. Both from a Friska point of view, but actually I think we're really missing something about human connection, brainstorming, coming up with ideas, feeling energized by the work that we do. And I wouldn't say it's just in hospitality. I think pretty much in most businesses, that idea of coming together to work on a challenge and solve a problem is infinitely more satisfying and probably more creative in many ways if you're able to actually see each other and talk to each other and draw things on whiteboards and just work like that. I mean, I remember Steve Jobs designed the toilets at the Apple HQ. It's either Apple or Pixar to be in the middle of the building, so that he would encourage these sort of creative collisions, I think he called them. And it's pretty hard to have a creative collision on Zoom. We'll see what the future looks like. But as always, Mark, I've gone off on one, and I'm probably answering a question you haven't even asked.
I thought about bringing you back, Griff, but however, I share. I spent 1 week when we were buried in our CBILS application with my finance director and financial controller, and we had this ridiculously, almost humorous spreadsheet that had every possible scenario that we could think of, sort of how to do financial forecasting. And we had don't open at all for a year, just open at weekends, open one venue and not the others. And we had all these things going on, and we must have spent 20 hours over the course of a few days, on Zoom, sharing a screen, going through this spreadsheet. And that was the week that broke me from ever wanting to get on Zoom again and run remotely. And it made me realize how much I want to sit down at a big table with a big bit of paper and some crayons and some espresso or maybe a nice pale ale and thrash stuff out face to face. And I, for one, am not supporting this idea that we'll never go back to offices again, albeit I don't mind if we all go back and work remotely in local cafes, bars and restaurants. That's okay, but definitely not gonna sit at home. Apart from this, Griff, this is a pleasure, obviously.
Indeed.
And I can't see your face. It is only audio. Maybe that's helping. So coming back onto topic, I just want to go through, I've spoken to various people, I suppose, about when they realise the impact that this pandemic was going to have. And as you just alluded to, people got sick in China, and we watched this play out in slow motion from Wuhan. And I think we all went, oh my God, imagine closing a city. That's incredible. And then Italy closed the country, and we went, holy shit. I'm just wondering in Bristol, because London seemed to move a little bit quicker than the rest of the country when I've spoken to people. What's your memory of sort of seeing this roll out, and when you realised it was going to have a big impact, and when did you close? Not dates, but just in general, kind of,
Yes. So I certainly remember the speed of events escalating being quite something. So I mean, I'm not particularly good with exact dates, forgive me, but the general gist was that, as I said, we heard something was going on out in China, and it was quite a big deal, but I think it had already started out in China, and we post that had a board meeting, and it wasn't mentioned. It didn't come up. And then, as you say, it sort of Italy was particularly hard hit, and we sort of started to think, crikey, I wonder if. But the government wasn't reacting. It wasn't panic stations, at least from a government perspective or from a comms perspective, telling us what we should or shouldn't do. So we sort of, I wouldn't say carried on regardless. We were aware that something was going on, but we continued to trade. And I remember it must have been the week before of shutting down. I think on the Tuesday morning, one of my colleagues said, someone that I know, they work at another cafe, and they're having daily coronavirus meetings. And we sort of looked at each other and thought, crikey, that seems a bit over the top. Well, maybe we should have one. so, so we did just that. We had that meeting, and within sort of 5-6 days, our stores were shut.
Wow.
Yeah, it all moved very quickly. I do question the sort of value of having endless planning meetings way in advance, because the speed at which everything sort of unraveled and the speed at which you were having to make decisions, I don't know how much value would have been in having all of this planning sessions, because things were changing so fast. I mean, I don't know about you, Mark, but you were having to make like major calls, and changing those calls seemingly on a daily or twice a day basis, and within a week you had gone from open to closed. Things that you probably wouldn't have run forecasts or planning scenarios on 2 weeks before. So yeah, I mean, everything changed very quickly. I think we were one of the first to put a message out on Instagram or Twitter, sort of talking about the steps we were going to be taking as a business. So we stopped keep cups, we stopped cash payments, we introduced takeaway, takeaway enabled services. We moved all cups and sugars and glasses outside of customer areas, and we moved pretty quickly with all of that kind of stuff. And then, sure enough, forgive me. Sorry, that was my phone. Let me.
That's all right.
Silly thing off.
No problem. Put them on. Are they happy to be on the air? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Is it your doctor?
No. So yeah,
that was quite an impressive amount of stuff you sorted out in one meeting, Griff. You nailed that Corona meeting. It's why you didn't need to have so many, because you work so efficiently.
Yeah,
but you're right.
It was hectic. It was a hectic time for everyone. You were having to make very quick decisions based on imperfect information, and really just do things that you felt were the right thing to do, both from a customer point of view, from a colleague point of view, and I guess ultimately from a business point of view as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The speed of decision making was insane, and I've definitely learned something from that, because we were making decisions in the morning with regards to opening hours. We were reducing them. We were going onto the website and updating our customers with what we were doing. And I can't even remember all of the details now, but all I remember is that, every time there was a news conference then at sort of 5 PM, you'd pretty much have to phone all of your team and arrange another emergency meeting the following morning and undo everything that you've done and sort of carry on that trajectory. And just before this, I was on the phone to my financial controller, and we were chatting about the sort of furlough scheme and what might happen with Rishi saying about it going to 25%, and who were we going to be able to bring back and who were we going to need to make redundant. And I just said, you know what, I'm allocating so little headspace to this at the moment, on the basis that the information is again going to continue to change really quickly, and we just need to get much more focused on the next sort of 2 or 3 days than I think the next 6 months. So I hope that's the right decision. We'll see as time goes on. Before there was this period, and it always interests me, I suppose, because it was a real emotional roller coaster, sort of 3 or 4 days. There was the period between Boris saying don't go to restaurants. You had the shutdown later on in the week, and then you had sort of Rishi's announcement. So I think we all knew it was going to be catastrophic, but we didn't know what we were going to do with our teams. And then Rishi came out and said, I will pay them for you 80%. Do you remember, I suppose, what were your thoughts, your sort of business planning and strategy looking forward in that gap? Were you confident that something was going to come? Had you mapped out with the business how long you could afford to stay afloat and pay people? And then how did it feel when Rishi came out and said, I've got this for you, Griff?
Yeah, I mean, he and the government totally saved the day with the furlough scheme, in terms of keeping colleagues on payroll and continuing to pay them. We had sort of looked at the numbers, and we were having to lay people off, which doesn't mean redundancy. It doesn't mean you fired them. It just means that there is no work for them. So we started to make those calls basically when we saw sales go from normal to 80 to 50 to 30%, and we were just thinking, crikey, this is getting pretty real, and at the moment the only way seems to be down. So we need to take some very difficult decisions, and we started to lay people off, and those were some very, very tough decisions and difficult conversations to have. I'm proud to say we had them all face to face. We're still a reasonably small company, so we were able to go across to all the stores and have meetings with all the members of staff that were in the building and explain the situation, and really cut the size of the team down. And then, of course, the Chancellor announced the furlough scheme, which was just a hallelujah moment. And I'm incredibly grateful for that, as I'm sure my colleagues are. I think what it also did, though, is it made decision making around keeping trading that much harder, because there was a point in between complete lockdown and when things started to turn nasty, where we were just basically thinking, how can we run a break-even business? Let's forget about making a penny. How can we run a break-even business, effectively selling our food as cheaply as we possibly can through home delivery model? So not Deliveroo, but more akin to meal kits that we would deliver to people. And we sort of modelled that all out. We turned around a Shopify website within 2 days, and it was incredible, actually, what we were able to achieve in 2 days, to figure out how we can just save as many jobs as we possibly can. And then, as you say, the furlough came in, and it just gave everyone a little bit of room to breathe. But sort of slightly perversely, I guess it gave less incentive for people to work through the pandemic and to be entrepreneurial in their approaches, because suddenly you were risking wages, you were risking the furlough payments. And so we decided just to pause for 3 weeks to really assess the situation, and to figure out what the next 3 to 6 months might look like. And then towards the end of the first month, we decided to go ahead and open a home delivery business, which we're currently running on a very small team. But we've decided to take a risk and to do something which we feel is still relevant to our customers and offers a much needed service and lovely food, ultimately.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, actually, and you're absolutely right. I don't think it's in our nature as sort of entrepreneurial individuals to just think, oh, great, the government is giving us some money, we can sit back and relax, and we automatically try and come up with ways to, like you say, to break even, to keep the team employed and to trade. And I struggled with that as well. And then I guess that was the point. I guess the point of that money was to stop everybody going out. And I guess at that point, we didn't know how quickly the infection rate was going to drop. We didn't know if the NHS was going to go under. We didn't know if we were going to need all those Nightingale kind of hospitals that were being built. And I suppose, it was an incredibly effective measure, and not only to keep people's heads above water financially, but actually to go, it is okay just to stop and just to pause. I guess the challenge with that now is as you try and trade out of it, is that your team are mildly incentivized, I suppose, to stay at home, and you as a business, anything you want to try. It feels like the furlough scheme, and hopefully that's what Rishi's going to come out with this week. I know he's going to talk about us making a contribution, but if you were like me, I'm guessing you'd like to bring people back maybe for a couple of days a week to try some things like what you're doing, rather than this sort of completely on or completely off scenario of furlough. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, we've taken the plunge, albeit jump into the shallow end, with 3 of us. So, we were all on the bench. And then we decided that Friska at home was a worthwhile pursuit. It was something that we thought would resonate with our customers and people would like to have. So I came off the bench, Sophie came off the bench, and Charlie did. And so we've kind of got effectively like a new business going with 3 people. So it's like starting again, Mark. starting a new business again. But as time passes, we will need to look at the viability of opening new stores, and having some flexibility around part-time working with team members will be crucial, I think, for making those very difficult decisions about when's the right time to reopen.
Yeah. So, what is Friska at Home then? Just talk me through that. What is it and how's it going?
What is it? It's basically our fresh, worldly foods delivered to your home, but rather than delivered on the back of a bike, possibly arriving a little bit lukewarm and smashed about in a box, we prepare the meals in our kitchen. We then vac pack them all up, chill them down, and we deliver a meal kit for you to warm up, heat up at home, and enjoy. So, in a way, people talk about suddenly having all this time off and everyone's enjoying the sun and reading books and reconnecting with their families. But actually, if you are working from home or if you're trying to homeschool, there aren't all these hours in the day to suddenly become a culinary wizard and read endless books. So time is still actually quite precious. And it's been a godsend personally having these meal kits arrive at our house, because it means that you can serve really fresh, tasty food literally in a matter of minutes. And it's significantly cheaper, I'd say, than ordering through Deliveroo. I mean, we've aimed at the price point at between sort of £4 up to £6.50 a head for a main meal. So it feels really affordable, and it's a way to keep the brand alive, keep it relevant at this time, when cafes aren't open, and deliver lovely food to our customers.
And are you delivering those yourself, or are you using the Deliveroo network, or how does it work?
No, I mean, we went on Deliveroo for all of one day, Mark, and we and we quickly realised.
Don't get me too, Griff, because they were so busy. You thought you'd try another system. Yeah, go on.
we quickly realised that we were no longer working for ourselves; we were working for Deliveroo, because
33%.
the commission that they charge is more than the net profit we would hope to make from a store.
Yeah.
And so we felt it was a completely, it was a fool's errand to be putting our dishes on Deliveroo. And actually, we would rather be in charge of the whole process ourselves. So it means it's localized deliveries. We're delivering 3 times a week, but we've bundled up the meal kits in 2s or 4s to allow people to basically meal plan for the whole week if they want to. We've got a reasonably broad menu as well, so it's not like you have to have the same thing every day. And we're already working on extensions to the menu. But we decided to deliver ourselves, namely me, doing the deliveries, because 30% is a lot to pay someone else to deliver your food in a mediocre way, we felt. And we'd rather keep all of the money and reinvest it into bringing more people off the furlough and to grow the business in a reasonably sustainable way.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, it is hard though to do delivery yourself as well. It's quite a time-consuming process. I'm not sure how anybody wins in that scenario. I guess the industry as a whole has been told, do delivery, and I've had to try and explain to people that when I've got 150 people sat in one of my restaurants, all ordering, at the bar and the kitchen's pumping, that's very different to driving 25 minutes across town with your sandwich and dropping it off at you.
And that's not what we're doing, Mark.
No, I get it. That's what I was going to say. I guess you're delivering meals. How long do these meals last in the fridge? How many days do they last?
Between 3 and 5 days.
Okay, great. So you can do it, and then there's a minminimum order level.
Yeah,
or
£20 minimum order level. But we wouldn't be doing it if I was delivering you one burrito. So I'd deliver you a burrito kit. We've also got wine on the menu. We've got specialty coffee. You can order Thai curries. You can order veg boxes, fruit boxes. So there's a reasonably large sort of menu, as it were, for you to build your basket up, which makes the deliveries, frankly, worthwhile doing. But we wouldn't be doing it to deliver one burrito to one customer.
especially not to me in Bournemouth. That's a long way on your push bike,
No,
Griff.
I think one of our customers actually thought it was going to be delivering 2 burritos ready to go hot to them, and they looked pretty puzzled when I handed them a kit. Um,
Yeah, and a Bunsen burner. So good luck.
Apparently, it took them like half an hour to make 2 burritos, and like I've done it in like 7 minutes. I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they said they had a great laugh and they thoroughly enjoyed it, and they'll be ordering again. So I think the
Okay.
kits are working.
That's good. And do you see this as being a sort of an additionally viable part of the business that you'll keep going if you're allowed to reopen?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, we it's been on the to-do list probably for about 8 years.
Right.
And it took a global pandemic for us to actually finally launch dinner kits. Yeah, we've often said that our stores happen to be open at lunchtime and close in the evening, but that's really just because of where they're located. So we're located in business districts, and everyone goes home in the evening. So why would we stay open? But we've always said that our food that we serve from the kitchen really does lend itself to dinners and any sort of meal occasion. And wouldn't it be good if we could have effectively like a dinner chiller in our stores? So yeah, the COVID-19 pushed us to get our dinner chillers going and deliver them in a van.
Amazing. I take it then that this period of lockdown has not been Griff sort of just chilling out and taking some rest. Have you been pretty frantic all the way through?
I'd say we were really frantic leading up to the lockdown, and like we sort of reflected earlier on, we were making daily decisions, make big decisions every day and changes every day. Then the lockdown came, the furlough came, and I think we were given time to breathe, and everything kind of chilled out for a week or so. And then I sort of started to get a bit itchy, to be honest. I was thinking, this doesn't feel right, just sitting, waiting. What could we be doing to keep Friska alive, to keep it relevant? And so, yeah, I read a few business books, which I haven't had the time to do in a long time. Tried to do some homeschooling, which I frankly failed at, which Alice tells me. Yeah, ironically, I come from a family of teachers, but unfortunately, I haven't inherited the teaching genes. So thankfully, Alice has done a reasonable amount of homeschooling. And then, yeah, we just sort of kept on, we'd be in touch as a management team and keep on saying, what about that Friska at home? What about that Friska at home? And then eventually we just thought, let's just give it a go. Let's see what happens. And that's exactly what we've done. And we've been running it for the last month.
Amazing. Okay, good. Well, that's good to hear. I need to check out the website, and good luck with it. I think we're all doing some stuff. We launched a drive-through restaurant at our hotel where you can pull into a bay at an allocated time and your dinner gets popped in your boot hot, and then you take it home with you. So again, avoiding any mishaps on the back of a push bike, and that's been interesting. And we have got a frozen range actually, so similar, but yeah, dine at home range coming out very shortly, just on a local level as well, where you can just pop it in the oven at home. That's why I was asking how long the food lasts. We ended up going frozen instead of fresh because we just couldn't get our heads around how to keep the food fresh for long enough. But I guess the vat pack idea probably as well. But anyway,
the backpack helps for sure, but I can definitely see the benefits of going down the frozen line. It's just our menu doesn't really lend it. There'll be elements in our menu that would work from a frozen perspective, but sort of the side salads, the coleslaws, the Kobe's wraps, they're not going to work so well on the frozen side. But just going back to your original question, Mark, do I see it being part of Friska going forward? Definitely. It was something we've been planning on doing for ages. This has given us a kick up the bum to get it launched, and we really think that it's resonating well with our customers. So when things start to crank again and hopefully eventually get back to normal, there's every reason to keep it going.
Amazing. Any other thoughts on what more the government? So if we move sort of slightly to the future, I suppose, what more support do you think the government needs to bring into place to help you and the rest of hospitality out? Anything specific you're looking for?
Firstly, I should say I feel that they've done an awful lot already. Like we've already touched on the furlough scheme, and that has been a tremendous, tremendous lifeline to the incomes of the whole team and the whole industry. So massive, massive thank you for that. I guess as we start to crank again, slowly, a big issue will be rents and landlords, and therefore reverting back to pre-COVID rents will be completely out of kilter with the likely revenue levels that we're expecting to see when we start to trade again. So I know there's been a big campaign around a national timeout, which I believe was it 9 months rent free that they're proposing. Now I know that just sort of pushes the pain onto someone else, namely the landlord. But I do feel there's going to need to be a rebalancing of rent to reflect the trading conditions, which by all accounts, in certain locations were pretty challenging anyway. We're not in London, but I've heard London rates of rent is pretty high. So it's going to be relatively even higher when we go back and reopen. And so I'm not entirely sure what the government can do per se in that particular example, but I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges for all businesses in our sector, which is just about bringing rents in balance with new trading conditions. And there'll need to be some understanding, I would say, from the landlords to make the industry viable. But not just our industry, Mark. I mean, it's retail at large. To make any shop viable with lower revenue, rents will have to flex.
Yeah, agreed. I've had JD on the podcast actually. So JD from Hospitality Union, which is the sort of group that's been set up representing over 3,000 independent operators.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a really good explanation of this. So it was on a couple of podcasts ago. If anybody's interested, can go back and listen. But he makes this point that, let's say, for example, your rent on a building is 120 grand a year. Actually, the chances are that your landlord is paying interest to the bank on that. And at 5%, that would be £80,000 a year that he's paying. So as a result, his profit for the year is actually only 40,000. So it's not about sort of saying, look, we want to pause 120 grand's worth of rent. We almost want to share the pain on 40 grand's worth of rent. And if the help we need from the government isn't about paying those rents, it's creating a framework to say, look, in the same way they did for domestic mortgages, to say, can we get a mortgage holiday, a 9-month sort of hibernation or pause across the property sector. And it says it all kicks back in on the 1st of January. And this isn't because we're greedy and it's not the landlord's faults and it's not our faults. The reality is that if that doesn't happen, there is absolutely no way that everybody can go back. Hospitality in particular, let's say it's going back in July at a very low level, and maybe we get to return to some sort of normal level September, October, but more realistic might be next April. You can't go back and be told on day one of reopening your building that you owe the previous 6 months rent. It's just impossible, and it will push tens of thousands of businesses over the financial cliff if that happens. So that's kind of his concept and what he's working on, although time is running out because the next rental quarter is due in sort of 4.5-5 weeks. So it's getting quite urgent, I think. That one. How are you finding your landlords from a negotiation perspective?
I'd say it's been a mixed bag without naming names. Some have been understanding and sensible and, willing. I mean, no one's happy about the pain that everyone's going through, but willing to share the pain and taking a pragmatic, longer-term view. Others, frankly, aren't, and are coming back with seemingly ridiculous proposals about, have a month on us kind of thing.
Yeah. How generous.
So I would say it's very much a mixed bag, as most things in life are. But the negotiations and the conversations, march ever onward. And look, I understand when landlords put forward a seemingly ridiculous proposal, it's really only because they're trying to protect their business as well. So I get it. It's just COVID-19 has been a slap round the chops for everyone, and I think it's important that everyone shares in the pain and the collective responsibility about getting the UK, cranking again and bringing a bit more business to the country once again. But everyone needs to be part of that.
Yeah, agreed. Last time we spoke, you talked about, where's the right place for a Friska, and I remember you saying big glass buildings, lots of people, milling around. Have they got a daily routine that involves food and drink? Do they eat? And if so, then yeah, that's the place for a Friska. I guess this is related really to rents and how you see us coming out of this. Is that still relevant? Most of your venues were aimed at the kind of office worker nipping out for lunch. Is that correct?
Yeah, very very much. That was sort of our sweet spot. So we would look around, we would look up, and if you can see big glass buildings with people frantically typing away at computers, we'd think that would be a good spot for a Friska. So that was our sort of criteria. We put a bit of maths around it, but broadly speaking, that's what we looked for in areas and sites. What are we going to look for going forward? That's a good question, Mark, and one I don't know right now. As we touched on before we started the podcast, I'm hoping that the world doesn't start working from their bedroom or their bathroom or God knows where via endless Zoom calls. I don't think they will, but time will tell as to what normal working will look like. If people do sort of work from home a lot more, then in a crazy way, there suddenly could be more site opportunities for us looking at residential areas where people aren't necessarily looking to go to a quote unquote proper restaurant or more expensive cafe that they might have down the road from them, and are looking for more of an everyday place. And so potentially the sort of site options for us might increase if people do start working from home more. But I mean, I'm crystal ball gazing here, and I have no idea, frankly, as to what that's going to look like. I think
Perfect. People will be used to listening to this podcast and realizing that both myself and none of my guests have got any idea, to be honest, Griff. So don't worry, you're not alone. But don't worry, because we've been chewing the fat on this for a couple of months with people. So we'll continue that trajectory in the fact that what's your current plan with reopening? Do you have one? I guess there's a lot of talk around, and from memory, not so many places of your venues are about eating in anyway. Because I guess a lot of people are saying, look, at 2 meters distancing, it's actually not viable to open, whether you say we can or whether you say we can't. Do you have any in option, or is it all takeout? And what's your current thoughts on when you might open?
Well, 80% of our trade was takeaway, but in all of our Friskas, we tried to create an environment which was welcoming and had some, comfy seats, some high stools, and creating a place for people to go to, even though most of them visited and then took away. I think the challenges of a 2 meter rule are still very much sort of front and center, even as a takeaway business, because during lunchtime the queue would go out the door and round the corner, and that's without 2 meters. That's when people were kind of pretty close. So you extend that to 2 meters, and it's going to head into the center of town, or alternatively, people aren't going to queue for goodness knows how many hundreds of meters to come and grab a burrito. So even as a takeaway-led business, 2 meter social distancing will have a significant impact on our revenue, 100%. Just as big an impact it will be when businesses return to work. So as you've mentioned April earlier on in this podcast, we've heard a similar thing. Some of our neighbours are talking about starting to return to work in October-ish time, with 100% return to work in April. So if that is the case, we've got a long, hard crawl up a mountain ahead of us. And we're going to all need to think of ways that we can keep our businesses attractive to customers, keep colleagues and customers safe, but also serve food and coffee, because that's what certainly Friska's here to do. I don't have any answers. I don't have a crystal ball. It's going to be an interesting time ahead. It's going to be a challenging time ahead. At the moment, we've sort of penciled in July as an opening time for our cafes, but it's very much TBC. It needs to be based on footfall and people going back to their offices. If you were to ask me personally, I would love to open last week because I hate having our doors shut. I want to be making coffee for people. I want to be serving food. I need to be doing it in a safe way, but also from a business point of view, we can only do it when we have enough neighbours that are walking to work and having a half an hour lunch break. And I really don't know when that's going to happen.
Have you given any thoughts to the sort of the COVID secure element of what opening might look like in regards to screens and masks and gloves? And have you given any thought for how that works? I know when we spoke, we chatted a lot about your sort of perfect member of the team, and it was smiley, happy, eye contact, a bit of banter over the counter.
Yeah.
You didn't want it to feel transactional. Any thoughts as to whether you can do that in a mask?
Well, Mark, I mean, you'll have to ask our customers, but I've been delivering in a mask. Sometimes even with sunglasses, so people haven't been able to see my smile or the twinkle in my eye. And yet feedback on the customer service from the bloke that delivered the food has been really good. So I think
I do find that
so I think that you can still make someone feel good. You can still show that you're pleased to see them without them seeing the whites of your teeth. So have I given it much thought? Probably as much thought as most other people. We've seen what businesses are doing. You'll have hand sanitizing stations. There'll be the screens. We will have face masks. We will observe the 2 meter distancing. We will probably have a limit on the number of people to come into a cafe. In fact, of course we will. We definitely will. And I think we'll actually rely and be able to lean on our technology more than we ever have. So thank goodness we've had a working app for years and have had the ability to do click and collect for years. And so that sort of method of taking orders and serving customers is well ingrained in our customer base. So I think lots more people will be doing click and collect. We're looking at office drop points as well to mean that customers don't actually need to leave their office to grab a... Sorry.
It's all right. We're nearly done.
Customers won't leave their office to get a Friska lunch. We'll be able to deliver to them. So we're thinking about all sorts of ways that we can keep teams safe, customers safe, and crucially, customers fed and happy.
Amazing. Is that app something you built yourself, or is that based on a platform?
Yeah, no, we work with a company called 5 Loyalty. We've been working with them for years, actually, and they offer a loyalty app, click and collect platform, and they're working on all sorts of neat stuff. Also a delivery function as well. So Friska at Home will hopefully be launching on our app in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that technology, it wasn't launched with a pandemic in mind, but absolutely, the features of the app are going to be useful for our customers when we reopen, for sure.
Yeah, definitely feels like that's going to be a growth area, I think, isn't it? We're building the same for our takeaway on the seafront. We did actually open about 10 days ago. Once Boris said you could sit in the sun, we've opened our takeaway, which is right on the beachfront. Talking about queues, you're right. Quite often it's sort of 50, 60 meter queue, but not actually with that many people in it. We're lucky that we're on a promenade and not going past sort of 7 or 8 other shops, because I can see how your neighbours would get a bit upset if you were blocking their doorways. But yeah, if we're a test case, people are definitely willing to queue at the moment, but I guess there's a limited supply, but demand is still there. But it's been interesting. But yeah, we're looking at building some tech as well to help out. So look, thank you for the update and what you've been doing. Where should people go if they want to follow your journey and your story, or try Friska at Home? Where's the best place for people to head, Griff?
So we've got an Instagram at Friska Food. And then if you've got listeners that are tuning in Bristol, at the moment we are only delivering in Bristol. We hope to be able to launch a national mail delivery of Friska at Home in the next few months. But right now it's athome.friskafood.com. I'm just typing it as we go to make sure it's the right address. There it is, athome.friskafood.com, and I will personally deliver.
I was going to say, you personally deliver it. You make it. You deliver it. It is the Griff show.
I make it with Charles. I'm his number two, for better or worse. And then, I head out in the van and deliver it myself. So, it'll be great if you can see some of your listeners placing an order.
Definitely. If I was in Bristol, Griff, I would order. I wouldn't mind what I ate. Just the thought of you rocking up on my doorstep with a mask, but still a smiley, happy, excited demeanour and aura would be enough for me. Is there any other burning or pressing issues in your headspace, Griff, that you feel that we should cover before we head off?
No, I think we've covered most things there, Mark. And I guess the future is uncertain, but all you can do is move forward with a sense of optimism, and remember that the sort of the mission, the why you do it hasn't changed. We all do it to serve lovely food, to make lovely coffees, and ultimately to make people feel good in that communal experience. And we're all looking forward for that to come back again. So keeping hold of that vision and that mission is really important.
Perfect. That is a nice close. Thank you so much, Griff, for your time. I'm sure we'll catch up again. But best of luck. I hope it goes well. Hope you navigate through. And we'll catch up on the other side.
Thanks so much, Mark. Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, please do me a very quick favour. It takes just a few seconds for you, but it really, really helps me out. Pick up your phone or scroll down on whatever device you are currently listening on, and find the review section for the podcast on your player of choice. At the very least, hit that 5-star and subscribe button for me, and even better, leave a few words so that I know you are listening and it encourages other people to do the same. It's super quick for you and appreciated so much by me, and it helps those bonkers algorithm bots get this podcast heard. I will be out with another episode in just a few days' time, and I'm currently releasing a show on a Tuesday and a Saturday because there is just so much to talk about. Okay, thanks again, and bye for now.